All right. Hello, hello, and thank you for chilling with Millen. I have with me my friend Joe Long, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to love this conversation. For those of you just tuning in, or maybe you watched last week, Joe is Barry's son, and he is awesome. There's a lot of fun things you're going to get to learn about him. Without further ado, Joe, would you introduce yourself to folks watching?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Millen, for letting me chill with you, bro. This is already the highlight of my day. For me, I don't know. That's one of the hardest questions, like describing myself. But I guess I would just say, I am a husband to my wife, Julie. We have three boys, 23, 20, and 16.
Wow.
So that means I'm pretty old, I guess. Yeah, I've been in Northern Kentucky most of my life, was born in Southern California to my mom and dad who were on the last episode, keeping it in the family. And I write for a living about products and have had several careers throughout my short life. I think, and right now I am helping to plant a vineyard church here in Covington, Kentucky with some really great friends. So I'm all over the place, man.
I know. That's why I love you, man. We're going to unpack a lot of that as well. So what's a fun and unique fact about yourself before we kick off our conversation?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's a nerdy one. I eat the same breakfast every day,
And that is?
and that is an English muffin with butter and a little bit of Trader Joe's everything bagel spread on it.
Ooh.
I'm saying it's great. And I get made fun of about it because I've been eating that same breakfast probably for the last 4 or 5 years. But I'm a creature of habit, man. What can I say? So there's a fun fact.
Hey, I'm with you on that, brother. I like English muffins. I have them most days. So you and I, again, more in common than we know.
Love it.
So, Joe, I asked you to chill with me today because you are one of the people that have made a difference in my life. And it's interesting because if I just hit rewind for people, I met you a long time ago, right? When did I meet you here? Let's see, probably around 2007, actually, when I first started coming to the church. But you and I, while we were like nice to each other, we never hung out, right? We never really talked much. We were just like, what up, dude? What up? We gave each other that church head nod, right? And
Mhm.
I would see you around, and you were really good friends with one of my other friends. And then it really, Joe, it wasn't until recently, right? Maybe, I don't know, the last year, would you say something like that, where we
Mhm.
started to hang out more. You started to talk to me more about what God was doing with you. And I would love for you to kind of talk to people today about that, because you said you're a man of many different jobs. You're a writer, and I know you do a lot with bourbon, which is why I chose this bourbon barrel background, because you and I do share that love of bourbon. But talk to us a little bit about your background, because I'll be honest, like when I talk to you, you're not the average church person I would talk to, right? Like you are involved in so many different things while you love Jesus and you talk about Jesus. You could talk about all kinds of different things, which is why I think you're awesome. So give us a little bit of your journey into your career, like the different things you're involved in, even bourbon, and what God did with you in your life, Joe, where you left the suburbs and you moved down to Covington.
Yeah. Wow. How much time we got, man?
Hey man,
Because
let's
that's a
keep it
lot,
going.
but that's good. You know what? I think that one of the things that I've learned about myself as I've gotten older is that, actually, one of the things that's been really helpful has been the Enneagram, which is interesting. And so I'm an Enneatype 5. And for those that know, you already know. That means that I am an information junkie.
Okay.
And I love to gather information. That's why I love to read books. And so anything that I've really decided to get into, I have consumed and dove in head first. And
Mm-hmm.
bourbon was one of those things. It was something that I really was curious about, especially living in Kentucky, and just took the time to really take a deep dive into that world and learn as much as I could about it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, have been able to host tastings for people and to write about it for a living. So I think that part of that personality type really feeds into that. And, I think Enneatype 5s are the type of people that not only love to consume information, but we love to give advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we're wise counsel often. Sometimes I'm sure we get caught off guard because what we really want is we want to be prepared. We want to be competent.
Yeah.
And so it might come off as a know-it-all sometimes, but we just want to be competent in a conversation and in a situation. That's why I even asked Millen, like, what questions are you going to ask me, bro? Because I want to think about it for a minute, right?
Yeah.
But you know what else about that is true as a tie-in to what Jesus is doing in my life is that I know information is not transformation.
Right.
Right? Like I can know everything there is to know about a thing, but if it is not changing me, then, it's not as valuable. And so a few years ago, I just really began to take a deeper dive into my faith and recognize that I have such a rich inheritance as a person. I mean, you guys heard my dad talk last time, and if you haven't, go back and watch it.
Yeah.
So he pastored a church for 30 years. I grew up in a Christian household, was incredibly blessed, and took a lot of it for granted. Just really was kind of like, oh, seems cool and everything, but I got this to do. I got that to do. And so a couple of years ago, God just really kind of opened some doors for me to hear some things. And one of them was about inheritance. And I was reminded that God's promises are always good. They just don't expire. Like, oh, you forgot about this one, or you thought you were supposed to do this thing, but you took too long in trying to figure out. So I've been able to step into that in some fresh ways. And the benefit for me, Millen, has been that I've been able to go from like 0 to 60 because of that inheritance really quickly. And anyone can do it because everybody gets that opportunity. But I think that one of the benefits, and I've talked about this with some friends, is being able to really go from like the starting gate to like sprinting really quickly, if that makes sense.
It does. But, and not to interrupt you here, Joe, but let me ask you this, because you say you had that inheritance and you took it for granted, and this happened relatively recently for you. Did you still have like practices in your life? Were you still making some time for God? Were you praying, or do you feel like he just kind of blasted you where you were and said, Joe, like how did that happen?
Good question. No, I never really, since my college years, I didn't really stray from my faith fully.
Okay.
It was always part of my life, but it was on the periphery. And what I did for a long time was I just treated it like, sadly, a lot of people do, as like an add-on or a bonus or like something extra instead of just this central part of who I am. And so, it went from, hey, this is an important part of who I am to this is the most important part of who I am.
Gotcha.
And it's really because of the work that I've seen God do in my life and the health that I have, the people that have blessed me, and the hope that Jesus provides for us. And the world doesn't have that hope. And, during this year, one of the things that I've been asking people in my life, whether they know Jesus or not, is where does your hope come from?
Yeah.
Because it has been a crazy messed up year.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. And so there's been some barriers knocked down in those conversations where I've been able to kind of skip a few steps.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah. Because
when things go wrong, you do question, well, where is my hope? Why do I wake up in the morning? What is it?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm rambling, but
no. I like it, man. So let's fast forward, or maybe hit rewind in this case, to you're living in the suburbs, living a nice, comfortable life in the suburbs. And you made what we would call in suburb world, a pretty radical shift where you sold your house and you moved to Covington. Talk to us about that. Like what was going on?
Yeah, well, you know what? That was a huge shift for sure. And have most of my life been pretty suburban, but Part of it is, we were stepping into a new phase of life with our kids getting older and
Hmm.
leaving the house.
Hmm.
But the bigger factor was the people that I was doing life with were in Covington. And I got invited into, uh, basically their circles a few years ago. And these are some guys that I grew up with and some guys I didn't know.
Yeah.
And once we stepped into those circles and began to just do life with them, which just means like we shared each other's experiences over food a lot and over
Hmm.
drinks a lot.
Yeah.
And we shared each other's heartaches and celebrated our victories together and just really formed deep relationships. And so that, and I was also volunteering at a ministry in a neighbor city, Newport, called Reset Ministries. I know that was brought up recently too.
Yeah.
And, that was another reason I was driving north 3 to 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
And so I would go to my wife sometimes and be like, hey, do you think we're supposed to like maybe be in Covington? And would that be a better fit for us? I know that we're kind of ready to do something different.
Yeah.
And so I began to, really pursue that. We had a false start, but then a year later, we found the house that we're in now and we love. And God has completely changed the way I see the people
Yeah.
of my city.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because you and I were able to dive deep in that over some food. I'm also a big fan of bringing food in the middle of it. There's something about it, right? You just get
That's
a little
good.
deeper with people. So talk to me about that, Joe, because you and your humility, right? You said, before you made that move, you just didn't view people with that broken heart that you do now. So talk to us about what that means and what happened.
Yeah, man. Well, you know what? When I started to, when we had committed to buy this house, and it was easy to be excited to be closer to my friends.
Mm-hmm.
That was easy. But what I also realized was part of this is that I am called to be an influencer, just like you are, and just like everyone is
Yeah.
in our areas of influence. And one of the biggest ones is our neighborhood.
Right.
And so I was like driving down my street, coming to my house before we moved in and seeing people walking along and being like, that guy is messed up and that
Mm.
person scares me. And these other folks, they're so different than me. I can't relate to this.
Yeah.
And so it was like it started as a prayer, like, God, I need you to show me how you see these people,
Mm.
because I'm not really capable on my own of just like coming up with this great story
Yeah.
or just dismissing this fear.
Yeah.
And I keep praying about that because I don't have it down yet, but man, things change dramatically.
So
And all of a sudden,
I'll hit pause on you real quick,
yeah,
because I just don't want to overlook this part. This is a big part, right? You prayed about that, right? You asked God to help you see others the way he does. I really don't want people to move past that one. That's huge. And it's not a one and done prayer, is it, Joe? Like that
no.
was something you were seeking God with daily, right? So let me ask you this, and it's probably hard to pinpoint when it happened, but like how long were you praying that prayer before you think you felt like something shifted?
Oh, at least a couple of months.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I just wanted to hit.
And
Yeah.
yeah, part of when I would kind of, talk about being a creature of habit,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I would do is when I would turn onto my street, when I got off of the highway, I would know that was my trigger. Like, okay, I'm going to start praying,
Yeah.
like not only who I see, but just the street. God, help me to see people the way that you see them,
Yeah.
as people created in your image
Mm-hmm.
that are no worse off than me in your eyes.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is still a process, but that was a big part of it. And it took months and it's still ongoing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So I interrupted you, but now what happened? When was that defining moment? Like, can you remember when you started to see people a little bit differently?
Yeah, I think that one of the times that's coming to my head right now that I'll share is so when we moved into this old house, there was a lot of stuff left by the previous owner.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to get rid of a lot of it because it was junk, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that's great about my city of Covington is that if you put stuff out on the street, a lot of times, as we say, it'll walk away. One man's trash is another man's treasure, right?
Yeah.
And so there were a few things I'm just going to put this in the back alley. And one day I drove in, it's before we were living here, and I walked back there to see if it had walked away. And there was a guy back there loading up a minivan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just like, hey man, how's it going? And he was just like, oh, I'm sorry. Like he thought I caught him with his hand in the cookie jar or something. But I was just like, oh, I'm really happy that you're doing this. And so anyway, I got to pray for him because, I was seeing him differently. I wasn't seeing him as like, oh man, what's this guy? What's he going to do? Is he going to ask me for change, or like, he knows where I live now? I wasn't thinking that way, which is how I would have thought in the past. And so I got to pray for him, and I know that he felt the presence of God because he held his arms up and he's like, my hair's standing up on my arms, man.
Wow.
And so that was something significant. And there've been a lot of those stories where I would normally just easily pass someone by.
Yeah.
And now, because of the eyes that God is giving me for people, I'll often stop and at the very least look them in the eye.
Yeah.
And say, hey, how you doing?
Right.
We as a society are so great at dehumanizing people unintentionally by not even making eye contact.
So true.
Like I did it the majority of my life. And I even went to my wife one time and I was like, do you know when you make eye contact with people, they're like really caught off guard?
Yes.
And she was like, I know, I do it all the time.
So that is really powerful, Joe. And I appreciate you just bearing your heart and being humble as well. It's what I love most about you, I think. So, for the average person watching this, maybe they believe in God, maybe they don't. For the people that do believe in God, that do live in the suburbs, I want you to talk to us a little bit because I'm still in the suburbs, right? And I remember you and I were having lunch one day, and you would never say this because you're too humble, but I'm gonna give you a shout out real quick too. Like you said something in passing that like made my jaw drop, but it was like nothing to you. You're like, I've prayed for a few hundred people over the past whatever. I'm like, a few hundred people. I'm like, man, that's more than I've prayed for in like years. But you just made that a way of life, I guess, Joe, right? Where praying is just who you are. It's in your DNA. And it's not like you walk up to people and say, let me tell you about Jesus. Here's the roads to Rome. And like, you don't approach it that way. You say, hi, how are you? You look them in the eye. You start a conversation, right? So for us living in the suburbs, right, where maybe we're just busy. And like you said, you were in that phase of life too. How do we start, Joe? Like what do we do as a next step? How do we get better at this?
Well, I think the first step is really to pray about it. I mean, that sounds cliche, but God really loves to answer prayers that we have when it comes to asking to be encountered by other people. Whether it's like, hey, you know what, here's a few people that don't know Jesus yet, or that would be outside of this family that I love so much.
Yeah.
And I'm going to begin to pray for them and just ask that I would have opportunities to talk to them.
Yeah.
And you would be shocked how often that actually happens. All of a sudden you'll get the text from the guy you haven't talked to for months.
Yeah.
Or you'll run into the person twice at the grocery store.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just happens. And it's an amazing starting point that we should never lose sight of.
Yeah.
Really, is just always bringing people to God and saying, God, I just want them in my family.
Absolutely.
Like I've gotten so much from this family and I love it so much. I want them to be part of it. Yeah. And I'm going to love them anyway, because as I've heard and heard before, and I think it was our guy, Jay Pathak, that said this.
Yeah.
He said, we don't love people to convert them.
No.
We love them because we're converted.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Because we were loved first and our lives were changed. We see people different. We interact with people different. It's why we care about people.
Yep.
Because my own self just is like, I don't know, man, like my buddies are my buddies, but that's about it. So starting with that prayer is a huge thing. And really just being around people is the next step, and asking God for opportunities, like, hey, I'm in this place. And God, you're doing something here. I want to be part of it. So what does that look like? And sometimes it might be a smile and a wave. And sometimes it might be something a little more bold. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
but just being available. And I say this to my friends and family all the time, is that our availability is so much more important than our ability.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Like, you don't have to be the dude that's prayed for thousands of people or has seen people healed or
Yeah.
whatever. You
No.
just got to be available.
That's right. That's right. And this is important, Joe, because I know you've experienced it. I've experienced it where like we have our go-to guys and gals in the Christian faith where we're like, oh, this person could really, use a talk from Joe, or maybe Millen can talk to this person. Maybe, they can pray for them. And that is not what it's about, is it? I mean, we would be happy to do it. But man, everyone has access and availability to these things, right? It's simple. It's just a simple thing where you pray for somebody. There's no recipe, there's no formula. It's just conversation and praying for people, right?
Yeah.
But you did say something that's important, is while we pray about it, and that's important, we always have this thing in the Vineyard saying faith is spelled R-I-S-K, right? There is an element of risk involved. There is uncertainty involved when you step out and obey God. If he says, hey, Jennifer, I want you to pray for that man that's across the room, or I want you to pray for that lady that's sitting by you. That is risky, right? That is uncomfortable. And I want to ask you, Joe, I didn't prep you for this, but I know that you're practicing this, but do you still feel nervous doing it? And can you remember a time where you took that risk and it actually worked out to your favor?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can remember the wins and the failures
It might be
because
good
you're
to
going
hear
to have
both.
both,
Yeah.
and that's what you got to expect. Like, we're not in the results-based business when it
Mm-mm.
comes to this stuff.
Mm-mm.
The results come from Jesus.
Yep.
He lets us partner with him for some reason. I don't really know why. He doesn't need us,
Yeah.
but he does. That's the plan. And so I guess that, I think what's been most helpful to me is being able to rely on that and almost need some nervous anxiety.
Yeah.
If it's all about me, then like I'm kind of getting it wrong,
That's right. That's right.
Don't get me wrong, you do become more comfortable talking to strangers or just asking people to pray for them.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I've been able to pray for a lot of people is we partner with an awesome ministry in here in Covington called Isaiah House,
Yeah.
where people come and receive food once a month, and we're the prayer team. So I get to go up to them, and my maturation has changed from, how you doing? Hi, how's it going? And hey, is there anything I can pray for you about? To now I'm just like, all right, what are we praying for?
Yeah.
Like I'm not even asking if I can. I'm just saying I'm praying for you. So let's go.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but here's the other thing, Millen, like I'm an introverted guy. I'm probably not coming across like that right now.
No, it's
And
funny
that's
you
the other
mentioned
thing
that.
that's such a testament to what Jesus can do in our lives,
Yeah.
is that he's taken me, who's saying someone who's said things like, I really don't love people,
Mm-hmm.
to like really going out of my way to
Yeah.
try to connect with them through the power that he provides for us.
Yes.
So I don't know if I answered that one right, but
No, you did. You did. And it's funny you mentioned introverts, because I once had a friend tell me, they said, Millen, you're extroverted, so that's why you do all this. He's like, I feel like church is designed for extroverts. And that was a really interesting thing he told me. But you're saying you're introverted. And I actually didn't even know that, right, Joe? I mean, just now I'm hearing you say that. But God can break your comfort zone, and he can get you excited about the things that you weren't excited about before. And I could even see your face light up, right, Joe, when you talk about praying for people. It's something I think you look forward to, right? It's just part of who you are now. So
I do look forward to it, man. And
Yeah.
one thing that I'm working on, and when it comes to being more like Jesus,
Yeah.
is being more interruptible.
Mm,
Because my personality type is like, if I know that we're going to do this thing, I can prepare my mind and my
Yeah.
heart and just go for it.
yeah.
But if it's like somebody walking up to me and I'm doing something else, I can still freeze up and be like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm working on that one, man.
Being interruptible, that is really important. We have our agenda, we have our plans, but we got to be receptive to that. That's a good point, Joe. So one of the things that I think you do pretty well, and I don't think I do the best yet, is when you're caught up in being a follower of Jesus, going to church, sometimes you get into this thing where Rich Nathan, shout out to Rich Nathan, I'll be interviewing him later, but he calls it puppies like licking themselves. I love how Rich articulates things sometimes. It's like, oh, I love you, you're a Christian, lick, 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 and you only hang out with Christian people that think like you, act like you, talk like you. And it's comfortable, right, Joe? It's comfortable doing that. And then you start to isolate everyone that doesn't believe in Jesus. And man, that's like the complete opposite of what Jesus did when he was here, right? So for the people that are maybe watching this that don't believe in Jesus or don't follow God, tell me about what you do there. Like, how do we be relatable to people that don't know Jesus? Like, how do you do that, Joe? Walk us through that.
It's a great question. And I think that what I try to do is, first of all, I try not to be a weirdo. You know what I mean? It's real easy to be that.
Yes.
And it's also real easy, like you said, to get into a position in life where you don't have any friends that don't know Jesus.
That's right.
Completely without doing it on purpose.
Yep.
And so first of all, I would say you do have people in your life that don't know Jesus. You're just not remembering them.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's somebody you work with or someone you encounter at the coffee shop all the time, there are those people in your life. They just might not be your besties.
Yeah.
But the way that I try to do it with my friends that aren't in the family yet is to really just be authentically me.
Yeah.
And for a good portion of my life, I was not that way. I was more like, hey, here's Jesus version of Joe, and here's hanging out with my beer friends, Joe.
Yep.
And I just keep them separate and didn't think much of it. I realize now how messed up that is. It's how inauthentic it is. And I think even if I had some views that people didn't agree with, they'd at least appreciate that I was being real.
Right. Right.
So what I try to do, especially with those guys at this point, is to provide a viewpoint that is real and that doesn't match up with how they see Christians in general.
Yeah.
Because as I've heard many people say, the problem with the church is that people are involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We mess up.
Yeah.
We're flawed. And unfortunately, some of those things get broadcast in media a lot. And then my friends come back to me, they're like, can you believe this? Can you believe that? And what I want to do is just represent a different viewpoint while not straying from my values.
Yeah.
Right. I want to be able to say, you know what? You're right. That person saying the thing, that's messed up. That's not what Jesus was about.
That's right.
And I'm sure that they've got a good heart, but they're wrong to have said that thing or done that thing. And I agree with you. But let me just say, here's what Jesus said.
There you go.
Here are the things that he represented. Yeah. And the people that were most against him when he was walking the earth, the church people.
Preach it. That's right, man.
So just trying to represent that viewpoint while not straying from my values, because it's real easy to also just be like, yeah, you know what? Let me bash them with you because they suck. Yeah. And you know what? Let's all just team up.
Yep.
But when I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, those people that don't know you yet, man, we got to pray for them.
Yep.
Be real, be authentic, and stick to your values. And I still struggle with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do too, Joe. I love that you went there, and it's true. I mean, it's true in every other facet of our life, right? I mean, if I love tacos, I love fajitas, and it's probably going to come out in a conversation sooner or later. And it just did. And I love Jesus, so that's going to come out in conversation too. And because that's just part of who we are. So I like how you went there, Joe. As we're approaching the end of our time, I just wanted to wrap up by you talking about Vineyard Covington, what your values are, and maybe just give us a little bit of a takeaway, Joe, like a next step for viewers today.
Yeah, we're a small church that just started here in 2020. We decided to plant during a pandemic. I mean, we didn't really, but it did happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? First of all, we just love our Vineyard family. We're so blessed to be part of a bigger thing.
That's right.
And have additional mentoring and pastoring and support systems, not only in our area, but across the globe. So we value that greatly. But we also just really love our city. and have been asking each other the question, like, what would it look like to create Jesus followers and help enable Jesus followers that can flip a city, not
Yeah.
just fill a pew?
Mm. What
Shout out to Alan Scott at Anaheim Vineyard. That's his jam. And man,
what
his
does it
book
mean,
Scattered Servants has changed a lot of how I look at my city.
scattered servants? What does it mean to flip a city, Joe?
I think it means to partner with the city. I think a lot of churches come into their environments expecting to be the saviors
Yep.
or to just create their own little bubble. And they've got good hearts and they're doing a lot of great things for the kingdom of God. So I'm not slamming them. But what if we did it this way? What if we went and became an asset to this city in a way where they look to us for support and for help? And we asked them what their dreams and hopes were so that we could say, all right, here's how we can help.
Yeah.
And just have that influence that, is so important and that we're taught to have, again, on our spheres of influence.
Yeah.
So that's a big value for us here in Vineyard Covington. And, we really, really value deep relationships too.
Yes.
We're missing having meals with each other during a pandemic, but we're going to get back to it at some point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, I could talk a lot about it, but
No,
that's a good synopsis, I hope.
well, that might be the way I want to close it out. Even what you just said with deep relationships. It is the pandemic. People are lonely. There's an epidemic of loneliness as well. And that's only getting compounded with what's happening. So, for people that are maybe introverted, for people that are hanging on to this message and are like, you know what, maybe I do want to pray. Maybe I do want to lean in. It is the pandemic. So how would you say in a creative way, Joe, like how are you in Vineyard Covington still maintaining those relationships and building those relationships even amongst the pandemic?
Well, I mean, one of the ways is Zoom. We have actually been really blessed to have
True.
this technology that we're using right now. 10
Yeah.
years ago, it would have been way tougher.
That's right.
But so we're creating some opportunities. At the same time, I don't think that we're called to be like an entertainment center.
No.
And I don't want to feed consumerism anymore. It's already a giant thing in my life and everyone else's.
That's right.
So we're also just trying to really challenge people to be intentional with how they relate to each other, and have said things like, I know you're fatigued when it comes to Zoom or technology, but some relationship is better than none.
Absolutely.
And you have to stay engaged. Even when times are tough, you have to stay engaged. So whether that means that you get on a Zoom call, happy hour with your neighbors, or you actually go and have like a little fire pit hangout, one evening, you've got to stay engaged. And that's what we're encouraging our folks to do as much as possible. And I just want to say one more thing.
Yes, please.
My introverted self.
Yeah.
I want to say that loneliness thing that you were talking about, that is such a massive issue in our world right now.
Yes.
People that don't know they're lonely are deeply lonely.
Yeah.
They need connection. They live around you.
Yeah.
They work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you can do to connect with them in a real, authentic way is a step in the right direction. So like even right now, think of the people. I know you got somebody.
Yeah.
That you're just maybe suspicious that maybe they need connection in some way.
Yeah.
And I know when I was invited into deep relationship, I was rescued from loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And man, I didn't even consider myself lonely at all. I was like, I got friends, I got family, things are fine. But the difference is stark.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you all definitely excel at that. And that's a good way to end this interview, Joe. Thank you so much for chilling with me. Would you, as I asked your dad, would you close us out in prayer, my friend?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Jesus, we love you. We love you deeply. And we thank you for opportunities to talk about you. I just pray that you would continue to mold us, to continue to give us eyes to see other people the way that you see them, to continue to give us opportunities to invite people that aren't in the family yet into the family, and continue to love us the way that you love everyone so deeply, and the way that you love the 99 and leave them for the one that needs you most. Give us eyes to see that one in our lives.
Hmm.
In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Joe, thank you for chilling with Millen. God bless you, man.
Thank you, bud.
See ya.